Okay, everybody. Today we're going to talk about Gregor Mendel. We're starting a new unit called Genetics, and we start with Gregor Mendel because he's considered the father of genetics. He was born in 1822. Later in life he became a monk, and while he was a monk, he was very interested in heredity. And heredity is the way how things are passed on from one generation to the next. When he studied this, he used pea plants, and pea plants was a great species to use. If we look at the pea plants here, we can see that for each characteristic, like seed shape, we have only two characteristics, round or wrinkled. If we look at seed color, we only have two traits, yellow or green. Flower color, we have only purple or white. So this is great because it's easy to follow from going from one generation to the next what happens to each trait for the characteristic. If we look at seed shape, if there was another shape, let's say round, square or triangle or something like that, it would be more difficult to follow from one generation to the next. So this worked out great for Gregor Mendel to follow heredity, to see how things were passed on. Now, the last unit we were talking about sexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction involves two parents. So there's a male and a female. They both provide genes, and those genes are combined in the offspring. So that's what he was interested in looking at. And when he did this, when he crossed these plants, he came up with three laws. He came up with the law of dominance, independent assortment, and the law of segregation. But if you notice, above these three laws, I have this term, factors. Now, you have to remember, back in 1822, they didn't know about genetics and DNA. So he knew that there was some factor that was passed on from one generation to the other. So if we go back to this first slide, if we had one plant that was round, one plant that had round seeds and another one had wrinkled seeds, and you crossed them, maybe the seeds came out round. Maybe there was a mix of round and wrinkled, or maybe just wrinkled came out. So that's how this law of dominance came out, because he said that sometimes some factors were dominant over the other, meaning, well, here, let's take a look at his experiment. He crossed two plants. He crossed a tall plant here and a short plant. Now, he called these, because these are the plants that he's starting with, he called these the P generation. Oh, I forgot to turn on my pencil. He called these the P generation for parents. When he crossed them, he got offspring, and he called these the F1 generation, or first filial. And he noticed that every single one of the plants that he crossed, 100% were tall. So first logical question would be, well, if you're studying heredity, the way how things are passed on, well, if we crossed a tall plant with a short plant, why are all the offspring in the F1 generation, why are they all tall? What happened to that short trait? Where'd it go? So what he did was, he then said, let me cross this F1 generation with each other, and let's see if this trait comes back. So he crossed the F1 generation, and when he got their seeds, he called this one the F2 generation for the second filial. And what he noticed was there was a 3-to-1 ratio. For every 3 tall plants, there was 1 short. So that short trait wasn't lost forever, it came back. So that's how he came up with the law of dominance. So let's take a look on how he explained it. So I'm going to go to a clean slide. I'm going to clear the slate here. Put back my pencil. All right, so he said that one of these factors was dominant over the other. So what we do is we take the dominant factor, whatever it is. So we're talking about height here. So we're going to say tall is the dominant factor. So we always start, we use the first letter of the dominant word. So tall is dominant. Short, now for the recessive trait, we use the lowercase we use the lowercase letter for the dominant trait. So we used capital T to show us that tall was dominant. We're going to use lowercase t, not s, but lowercase t to show that short is recessive. Okay, so he crossed a tall plant with a short plant. And what we're doing here, this is called a Punnett square. A Punnett square is designed to show you percentage or chances of outcome for offspring of certain parents. So here we have a parent that's tall and a parent that's short. So if we cross this, what we get in the box is the F1 generation. So the F1 generation, if you remember from the last slide, came out 100% tall. So here we have a dominant trait with the recessive trait. The recessive trait doesn't show when it's paired with the dominant trait. So this is like saying that it got the tall gene from its father and the short gene from its mother. Came back, remember with meiosis, right? And fertilization. So they came together and the dominant trait is showing. So we have 100% tall. Now he took this F1 generation that's in this box and he crossed it with each other. So I'm going to do it over here. So here's the Punnett square again. So he crossed one and one here. And then when he crosses these, he gets a 3-to-1 ratio. 3 tall plants. Okay, let's take a look at this. 3 tall plants, one here, one here, one here, and one short one. So for out of every 3 plants, or every 4 plants or every 4 seeds that were planted, one was short. So in order for a recessive trait to show, you have to have 2 small traits, or I'm sorry, 2 small, 2 small genes, or in Mendel's case, 2 small factors. So I'm going to delete this. If you need to replay this again, feel free to do so, but I'm going to clear this. And I'm going to say that if we could tell by looking at a short plant what its factors are, right? Because there's only one possibility. In order for a recessive trait to show, it has to be 2 recessive traits together. But a dominant trait has 2 possibilities. We have big T, little t, right? When you have a dominant trait with a recessive trait, the dominant trait shows, so this will be tall. This one here will be short. And then you also have big T can also show tall. All right, so here, so short, there's only one possibility. That's easy. Tall, you can't tell by looking at a pea plant if it's big T or big T little t. So I'm going to clear this, go back to this slide here. So my question to you is, this slide here, we know that, this plant here we know is little t, little t. This one here, this one could have been either big T, or big T, little t. How did Mendel know which one this is? Okay, so that question is going to be one of the questions you need to answer for tomorrow. I'd like you to look that up tonight to be able to answer for tomorrow. And I also want to give you some I want to give you some words for tomorrow to look up. And let me see how. All right, so I'll just do it right here. So I want you to look up what the word hybrid means. I want you to know what homozygous means. I want you to look up heterozygous. And that should do it. I just want you to look up those three words: hybrid, homozygous, and heterozygous, what those terms mean. And so for class on Monday, I want you to go into groups. So if you could write down your group number and who your partner is. All right, group 1, and I'm going to give you a title or for your what your job will be in your group. So you can either be a manager, you're going to be a recorder, or you're going to be a note taker. All right, the manager for group 1 is Connor. The reporter is Dan Talty. The note taker is Alex Eitzer, or Alexis Eitzer. So, and I'll go over a little bit more on Monday what we're going to do. All I want you to do is write down what your group numbers are. Group 2, the manager is Cliff. I have 2 recorders here. One is Nicole Connolly. The other one is Adam. And the note taker is Tom. And group 3, the manager is Brandon. The researcher is Wyatt. And the note taker is Ciara. For group 4, the manager is Kelly. The researcher is Kevin Moran. The note taker is Jeff Groff. Group 5, the manager is Allison Maluli. The researcher is Aaron Dugan. The note taker is Samantha. Group 6, the manager is Dana. The researcher is Kyle. And the note taker is Alex Klein. And group 7, the manager is Erin Sherlock. The 2 researchers are Dan Potter and Raymana. And the note taker is Elizabeth. So please write down who your group is. If you missed it, please back up and write down what group you're in. Okay? So please look up these terms and be ready for class on Monday. Have a nice weekend.